And I also hope that you're having an amazing day so far. All right, so for today, we will be doing our high school English lesson um, on purpose, audience, purpose, and tone. So it's going to be a high school lesson. It's mainly for like high school students on audience, purpose, and tone. So this is basically to do with writing. So before we start, we're going to log into aplusstudents.ca. We're going to log in with our username as well as our password. And then once we've logged in with our username as well as our password, and then we are going to select the subject of language arts. Doing the school lesson, right, on advanced writing, um, we are going to focus specifically tonight on the grade 10 lesson, and you're going to go down to audience, purpose, and tone. So I've been chopping it around, doing different grades. So today we're going to the grade 10 chapter on audience, purpose, and tone. So we are in grade 10. The chapter is audience, purpose, and tone. All right, so once we are within the chapter of audience, purpose, and tone under grade 10, then we're going to focus on a few lessons, right? The first lesson is going to be identifying audience and purpose, right? Then we're going to compare different passages for tone, and then compare passages for subjective and objective tone. And then we will be able to find out which text is more formal, right? And then to identify appeals to ethos, pathos, and logos in advertisements, and also how to use those in persuasive writing. All right, so we're going to the first lesson, which is identify audience and purpose. All right, so when we identify audience and purpose, right? Audience and purpose are important factors that work together to guide writers' decisions about word choices, right? Sentence styles, tones, and the use of evidence. So, audience and purpose, right? It is important factor that work together. So, audience and purpose, they work together to guide the writer's decisions about word choice, sentence style, tone, and the use of evidence, right? This is now when it comes to writing. So when it comes to audience, right? Audience refers to the intended. So audience, it refers to the intended readers, the readers of a text. And writers use their understanding of audience to make choices about what information readers need. So writers use their understanding of audience to make choices about what information readers need, what evidence readers will find convincing, and what language is most appropriate for those readers. So basically, the focus is on the audience. It's like the target, right? So it refers to the intended readers of a text. So writers use their understanding of audience to make choices about what information readers need, what evidence readers will find convincing, and what language is most appropriate for those readers. And an example of this is a car ad targeted towards an audience, right? Of new parents might describe a vehicle as spacious and boast about its crash test ratings. Meanwhile, an ad for the same car targeted towards outdoor enthusiasts, might use words like rugged and emphasize the vehicle's four-wheel drive capability. So it really depends on the audience. And remember, it depends on what they think is best for either the reader, or when it comes to advertisement, it is like basically choosing a target market, right? So that is what the audience is about. Then we have purpose. Purpose. Purpose refers to a sorry about purpose. It refers to a writer's reason for writing. So what is the purpose of this writing? What is the purpose of the text? What is the reason? Right? So that's purpose. It is the writer's reason for writing. So, yes, the audience is identified, but what is the reason or the purpose for writing, right? Another way is, what do you as a writer want to accomplish, or what do you hope to accomplish by writing this piece? So that is purpose, right? Purpose refers to a writer's reason for writing, or what he or she hopes to accomplish while or at the end of writing the article, writing the text, or writing the book or something, the textbook even. Two primary purposes, right? So, two primary purposes of nonfiction writing are to inform readers, right? As with a textbook or lab report, and to persuade readers to change the way they think or act, as with an advertisement or a newspaper opinion piece. So basically, the purpose of nonfiction writing are to inform readers, as with a textbook or a lab report, and to persuade readers to change the way they think or act. That is why they always have a moral to something. As with an advertisement or a newspaper opinion piece, individual pieces of writing will typically have more specific and complex purposes. So we say that individual pieces of writing, so writers who write individual pieces of writing, they will typically have more specific and complex purposes, right? Meaning that what is the reasons for this writing? They will specify it because the the pieces are not that long, right? What do they hope to accomplish? So they would be more specific, and yet their purpose would be complex. For example, a news report might inform voters or politicians voting records by providing that information without commentary, right? So a news report might inform voters of politicians' voting records by providing that information without commentary, meaning that they won't comment about it. So a political website might try to persuade voters to support a particular candidate by highlighting the specific portions of his or her record that the website's visitors are likely to approve of. So it's more persuading voters to vote, right? They would highlight specific things about the specific politician that would make you to want to vote, that would make you to want to, for example, be part of this political rally. So basically, the purpose, right, has two primary purposes when it comes to nonfiction writing. It is to inform the readers as well as to persuade them. And that is why we also have persuasive writing, because they want the readers to change the way that they think or act. And that is why, like we say, there is morals to every story. All right. So once again, audience and purpose are important factors that work together to guide this decision. There needs to be an intended audience, right? Readers of a text. We need to understand the audience. Information and choices needs to be made, information that the readers need. And what evidence do you think, as a writer, readers will find either convincing, and what language is most appropriate for readers? That is why, when it comes to audience, it's having a target when it comes to reading or writing. The same with advertisement. If you are advertising, for example, household products, right, you are basically trying to convince adults, people who are either living on their own, right? So that is your intended audience. So what is appealing to them? What evidence do they find convincing? What do you need to say in order to convince them to buy this product? But you will not, your intended audience will not be younger kids. So with audience, right, comes purpose, because remember we said that purpose and audience, it is important factors that work together to guide a writer's decision about word choices, sentence styles, tones, as well as the use of evidence. So the purpose, right, it is the writer's reason for writing. What does the writer hope to accomplish, right? So that is purpose. What is the reason for writing? And what is he or she hoping to accomplish by writing this piece? And when it comes to purpose, right? Purpose has two primary purposes of nonfiction writing. It is either to inform readers or to persuade readers to change the way they think or act. It is to inform readers, right? Or to persuade readers to change the way they think or act. All right. And remember, when it comes to persuasive, right? Persuasive writing can be quite convincing, because when it comes to persuasive writing, then it means that you need to be able to persuade somebody so in a manner in which the audience would want to either read the book, or they would want to, in this case, the example that they made about politicians and voting, right? writers will make it so, they will be so persuasive in the sense that they would want you to either get a product, vote for a specific political party, right? And they would highlight specific portions in the record of either the politician to make it seem as this is the better candidate to stand for either whichever position within a political realm. All right, so that is basically purpose and when it comes to audience. So when we review, let's say, lab reports, right, and conclusions, and then we answer questions. So which is then best indicating that the primary audience is a science teacher or other student? We are going to find that out. So based on the data gathered, we measured the boiling point of water as 99.51 degrees Celsius. The error against the expected measurement was 0.49%. Source of error may have been impurities in the water, contaminations, equipment, or human error in reading the thermometer. If we repeated the experiment, we might achieve more accurate results by sterilizing our equipment using distilled water and verifying that the thermometer's readings are correct. So that is basically reviewing the lab reports as well as conclusions, right? All right. So, so basically, when it comes to when it comes to reviewing a either a lab report, right? Um, we sometimes need to find out is it for who the audience is, right? What the purpose is of, let's say, the text or lab report, right? So question is based on that I basically just read, which best indicates that the primary audience is either a science teacher and other students, right? So in that text, right, they are saying that it is still a bit unknown. So here they're saying based on the data gathered, we measured the boiling point of water as 91 degrees Celsius. Sources of error may have been impurities of water, contaminations of equipment, or human error in reading the thermometer. So, which means that if we repeated the experiment with more accurate results by sterilizing our equipment using distilled water and verifying that the thermometer's readings are correct, right? So, this still gives us an indication that the writers described a simple experiment with a no outcome, right? And to determine the text audience, we need to examine how the writer present his or her message. Sometimes we need to see, is it referred to a student or is it referred to maybe a science teacher, right? So the writer will sometimes pick words, or let's say, in order to target a specific audience. So he or she will describe experiments with known outcomes. And this suggests that the text is intended for readers interested more in the writer's completions of an assignment than in gaining new information, such as a science teacher and other students. Basically, people who are in science will find this more appealing. If you are not in science, then of course it will not be for you. So then you are not the targeted audience. But if you either a science teacher or you're a science student, right? And you will need to find this information relevant, then this is basically for you. Then the intended piece of writing is for you. But like I say, if you are not, for example, either in this case a science student or a science teacher, then you won't find anything to do with degrees, boiler points, right? Contaminations, thermometers. When they talk about those things, you will not find it quite interesting or appealing because the writing is not intended for you. The text is intended for readers that is more interested in the writer's completion of the assignment, as well as if they want to gain new information. And that is specifically if maybe, let's say, the student needs to research on anything that is to do with experimental or science, or the teacher who needs to deliver that information. All right, so that is basically when it comes to reviewing a lab report, right? So now to review the letters to editors. So if we review a letter to the editor, I was dismayed on Friday when the Burlington City Council announced its intent to reduce library hours at all branches in an effort to cut costs. The reduction in services will negatively impact students in our community. I have worked at the downtown branch for more than a decade, and I've seen just how important the library is. Every day, dozens of students come to the library after school to do homework. For many students, there are no other safe supervised spaces available during the afternoons. To protect this space, contact your city council representatives and speak out against reducing library hours. So, this is basically a letter to the editor. So, the question then is, right? What is the text, the purpose of the text, right? So basically, the main purpose of this text is the fact that the, or let's say the problem within the text is the fact that the library is being closed, right? And a lot of students within the community, they basically need access or they use the library for homework or for whichever research purposes. So when it comes to a news report, right? A news report is, in this case, a letter to the editor, right? So with in this case of a letter to the editor, right? The main purpose of this text about the library closing down because they don't have funds, the main purpose is to encourage readers to support the library hours, right? And you need to support it. Why? So that learners or students will still be able to go to the library, have access to it, because that is basically the only safe space that they have to either study. And sometimes that is also the only way in which they can maybe have access to the internet or access to let's say library books in order to do research. So The purpose is to encourage readers to support the library hours in order to avoid closure. And we can also tell that, right, by the way it argues against reducing library hours and asks readers to contact the city council members. So in the last sentence, it says, to protect the space, contact your city council representative and speak out against reducing library hours, meaning that the writer within who wrote this text or who wrote to the council, right, is also appealing to people to protect the space, protect the library by also speaking out. And also the exclamation point states the stress or the importance of make contact with the city council in order to protect the library from reducing hours or from closing down the library completely. So this all comes back to audience and purpose, right? Who are the intended people, right? Who are the intended readers? So in this case, seeing that they are saying that in order to protect the space, we need to contact the city council, that means that the audience is parents, right? Parents who have kids who are making use of the library, who has access to the library, right? And they are saying, make contact with the city council so that they do not reduce the library hours. Yes, the audience can also be for students, but when it comes to being in contact with the city council, then definitely the audience is mainly your parents. Because the audience are the intended readers of either texts, right? And then also we must understand the importance of purpose. And the purpose of the writing or the text is so that we can avoid reducing of hours. And so that parents or people can support the current library hours and not reduce it. So within a text, right? Within a text, when it comes to writing, the writer will think of the audience, right? Because audience, as well as the purpose of its writing, it works together when it comes to the writer's guide or guiding the writer. It is important because it guides the writer's decision about the choices of wording. And remember, choice of word depends on who you are writing it to, who are the intended people or the intended readers of your text. Your sentence styles, if you are mainly writing it for kids, then the style of writing and the tone would be different. Even the font would be different, as well as the uses of evidence. All right. So now, if we review the social studies textbook, right? Although Paul Revere gained lasting fame for his midnight ride warning colonists about an impending British attack, many people aren't aware of a similar ride taken by a 16-year-old girl, Sybil Luddington, born in Connecticut in 1761, completed her own perilous night ride in advance of British forces. In 1777, British loyalists and troops attacked Danbury, Connecticut. In desperation, a messenger asked Ludington to ride through the night and alert the local regiment. All told, Luddington rode 40 miles, significantly further than Paul Revere had, and managed to gather nearly the entire regiment to fight the British. Following the Danbury battle, George Washington himself traveled to Luddington home to thank Sybil for her bravery. Luddington's ride never became as famous as Paul Revere's. However, if you visit New York, you can find historical markers tracing her route through Putnam County. All right, we're going to read that again. So, although Paul Revere gained lasting fame for his midnight ride, warning colonists about an impending British attack, many people aren't aware of a similar ride taken by a 16-year-old girl, Sybil Luddington, born in Connecticut in 1761, completed her own perilous night ride in advance of British forces. In 1777, British loyalists and troops attacked Danbury, Connecticut. In desperation, a messenger asked Luddington to ride through the night and alert the local regiments. All told, Luddington rode 40 miles, significantly further than Paul Revere had, and managed to gather nearly the entire regiment to fight the British. Following the Danbury battle, George Washington himself traveled the Luddington home to thank Sybil for her bravery. Luddington's ride never became as famous as Paul Revere's. However, if you visit New York, you can find historical markers tracing her route through Putnam County. So basically, which best indicates that the primary audience is readers with basic knowledge of Revolutionary War. So within this text, they are basically making mention of the different of the war that basically took place in the years between 1761 and maybe around about 1777, right? And after. So, in order for us to determine the text's audience, we need to examine how the writers present his or her message, right? In this case, we need to assume that the reader is already familiar with the Revere's Midnight Ride. So, the writer specifically makes mention of specific details as if they know about Sybil Luddington as well as Paul Revere. And in this case, they are giving more information about Sybil Luddington than they're giving about Paul Revere, which means that it indicates that the writer expects that the reader should know more about Paul Revere. Right? And that is why they are saying that Luddington's ride never became as famous as Paul Revere's. So it does show that both Paul Revere as well as Sybil, they did the midnight ride, warning colonists about an impending British attack, but they are not giving more or further details about Paul Revere compared to Sybil Luddington. And as much as it shows that Luddington's ride never became as famous as Paul Revere's, we must also understand that in the 1700s, right, women were not much considered, or let's say praised as much as when it comes to men, right? So whatever women did had to also be on the, let's say, it had to be on the down low, if we could put it like that. So the writers will just assume that the reader is already familiar with Revere's Midnight Ride, and that is Paul Revere's Midnight Ride. And that is why they are not giving much information about Paul Revere. And this will also suggest that the text is intended for an audience who has some understanding about the historical context in which Luddington acted, such as readers with basic knowledge of Revolutionary War. And this text is kind of similar to the very first text of the lab report. You will only find it appealing if you are either studying it, or you are, like in this case, you are probably into the understanding of historical context, right? Or you want more knowledge, or you have basic knowledge of Revolutionary War. So if you focus more on Revolutionary War, on history, and then this text is really intended for you. The same with our very first text with the lab report. It was intended for science teachers or science students. And it was specifically intended for science students and science teachers because of the specific details of information that was given within that text. They spoke about thermometers, they spoke about different decimals that they use. So if you have no idea about science, or you are not interested in science, and then it means that that text is not intended for you. The same with the political review, right? This text will be more appealing for someone who is more into Revolutionary War, right? They are more into history and the knowledge of history, right? Which means that they have already researched Paul Revere, and they want more knowledge when it maybe comes to the findings surrounding the Paul Revere and the Midnight Ride, when it comes to warning the colonists many years ago. But if you are not into anything to do with history, you're not thinking like a historian, then you will not find this appealing. And that is where audience and purpose comes in. That is why we're saying that audience and purpose are important factors that work together to guide the writer's decisions about word choices, about sentence styles, about tones, as well as the use of evidence. So the audience as well as purpose, they work hand in hand. And remember, we said that the audience are the intended readers of the text. It refers to the intended readers of the text. In this case, of the Paul Revere and Sybil Luddington case, the intended readers of this text is probably somebody who is or has basic knowledge of Revolutionary War, right? And then the purpose of this text is maybe for them to gain more information about whatever that happened many years ago or within the 1700s. Which means that here they're even giving you information by saying Luddington's ride never became as famous as Paul Revere's. However, if you visit New York, you can find historical markers tracing her route through Putnam County, which means that whoever that's into Revolutionary War probably also visit New York. Because with gaining information, reading about certain things, most people tend to also want to visit historical markers, historical buildings in order to basically experience it for themselves. So, audience and purpose are important. They're important factors that work together to guide the writer's decisions about the word choices. If they are writing an article for kids, the tone of writing will be totally different. The type of language or sentence styles will be different. Sometimes even the font sizes will be different because you need to attract the reader's attention. And when it comes to kids, they prefer things that are more bold, things that are more simple, easy to read, right? Sometimes even with the use of evidence, it is more pictures that needs to be shown so that they can put pictures to words. choices of words, so word choices, humor in writing. So that is if the audience are, or let's say that it is intended for kids or for learners, right? But if the audience are, sorry, are adults, then of course the writing choices are different, right? There will probably be more words, smaller words, sentences will be a bit longer, paragraphs will be longer and extended, right? Tones will be different. It will be more formal and straight to the point, right? As well as the use of evidence will basically accompany with that. So that is why audience and purpose are important within writing. All right, let us do a test before we end off. Oh, and now I apologize. What's happening? Right. All right. So here they're saying read the letter to the editor, right? And then answer the question. And at the end of the day, we need to answer the question, who is the primary audience? Is it fellow librarians or local parents and community members? I was dismayed on Friday when the Burlington City Council announced its intent to reduce library hours at all branches in an effort to cut costs. The reduction in services will negatively impact students in our community. I have worked at the downtown branch for more than a decade, and I have seen how important the library is. Every day, dozens of students come to the library after school to do homework. For many students, there are no other safe supervised spaces available during the afternoons. To protect the space, contact your city council representatives and speak out against reducing library hours. So, this is a letter to an editor. So, now we need to find out who is the primary audience. Is it fellow librarians or local parents and community members? So, in this case, it is basically somebody that is writing to basically the city council, and they also want people to protect the space by also contacting the city council representatives and to speak out against reducing library hours, right? Most times it will be fellow librarians. However, the they are mainly saying that the kids are making use of the services, like in the sense of doing schoolwork or homework after school, right? So, which means that the primary audience within this text can be the local parents as well as the community members because they need to protect it for their kids, even though the fellow librarians are also the audience. But remember, fellow librarians are the kids. And if they need to write to the city council, then it means that the parents as well as the community members need to write to the council. All right, review the letter to the editor. Oh, it's the same one. Here they are asking now which best indicates that the primary audience is local parents and communities, right? Is it the writer addresses readers who have Burlington City Council representatives, or the writer reminds students how much they enjoy the library? So is it the writer addresses readers who have Burlington City Council representatives, or the writer reminds students how much they enjoy the library. So in this case, we mentioned that the local parents as community members, right, are the target audience within this text. So now they want to know which best indicates that the primary audience is local parents and community. So, is it the writer addresses readers who have Burlington City Council representatives, or the writer reminds students of how much they enjoy the library? They are not making mention of the audience, which is the students. So, let's say it is that one. So, it is the parents. So, in the same text, what is the text's main purpose? So, is the purpose to encourage readers to support current library hours or to show the importance of libraries for teens? So, in this case, it is to encourage the readers to support current library hours, and that is why they're saying we need to, or they need to protect the space and to speak out against reducing the library hours. And who is, oh, here's another one. Let's read the blog post. Coasters and trivets are easy to create and they make great gifts. All you need for this simple DIY project are pieces of cork, a template, a mat cutter, a pen, scissors, and a flat workspace. Start by choosing a template shape such as a star. Trace the template onto the cork, cut out the shape with the mat cutter. Voila! You have a cork star that can be used as a coaster or a trivet. All right, so basically, who is the primary audience? Is it crafters who want to start a new hobby or crafters interested in a quick and useful project? It can basically be both but we need to choose one. So, crafters who want to start a new hobby or crafters interested in a quick and useful project. I think it is the crafters interested in a quick and useful project. Voila. All right, the same blog, which best indicates that the primary audience is crafters interested in a quick and useful project. The writer includes a short list of necessary materials, or the writer emphasizes the simplicity and utility of the project. So the writer includes a short list of necessary materials, or the writer emphasizes the simplicity and utility of the project. So the simplicity and the utility of the project. And what is the text's main purpose? To explain how to make a cork coaster and trivets, or to persuade crafters to give coasters as gift. How to make coasters and trivets. All right. So that is now the end of our lesson on language, on audience purpose and tones. We only focused on the lesson of identifying audience and purpose, but next time we will definitely continue with the other lessons, comparing passages of tones and the rest of the other lessons. So thank you very much for joining our class. You should have an amazing evening further. Goodbye.